All right. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to our Circle of Life Coalition presentations. We're very pleased to see everyone here. A little housekeeping before we get started. Please place yourself on mute. If this is being recorded, if you do not wish to have your face on camera, you certainly can put your camera off. The little icons wherever they are on your screens, usually if you hover around the periphery, you can find the camera and turn the camera part off. Throughout the presentation, if you are muted, then you will be able to hear very clearly. So again, welcome. The Circle of Life Coalition envisions an informed community open to honest conversations about life and death, one in which we inspire each other to live life fully while acknowledging the inevitability of death, and where choices for end-of-life care are effectively communicated, documented, respected, and honored. This morning, we have a very interesting conversation to discuss and our speaker. But before that, we have a sponsor. It's all about you, Amy. And so we will give her, Amy, a few minutes to talk about her product. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me today. My name is Amy, and I am the owner of It's All About You, Amy. I specialize in creating handcrafted jewelry and keepsakes. All my items are handmade. Most of my items are personalized and customized, and that's what makes it special because I work closely, or I can work closely with people and my customers to create something special that is unique to them and their story. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here, and hopefully you all can see it. And we'll just go through. I just for today with the speaker, I'm just posting some pictures of memorial jewelry that I have. These are just a few items that I carry and that I make and that I can personalize. Any of these items with a name, a date, a special saying. I do a lot of work with aluminum, and all of my items are hand stamped. So I use metal letters and stamps, and I hammer them one at a time into the metal, and that creates an impression, and then I darken that. So I can create, and this picture of the butterflies, this is a lot of my packaging. I create custom packaging for people, and I can also create individual packaging for something special if they want me to. So these are just a few things that I have for my memorial. This cuff bracelet, this is a hidden message bracelet. This one in particular is, someone asked me to make a memorial bracelet for a brother that had passed away. So this message is actually on the inside of the bracelet, and then there's a pattern on the outside. So nobody knows except for the wearer what that message is. So these are really popular in my store. This is an example of messages on the outside. I have over 30 different fonts and stamps that I can use. And so I can really create something special for you. And let me just stop my sharing. I think is it back to me now, my face?
Yes.
Okay. So that's just a little bit about me. I've been on my own for the last 2 years. I've been in business for the last 7, but I went out on my own almost 2 years ago. It's just me. I make it, I package it, I ship it, I take my pictures, I market it. So you're just dealing with me. And that is also what makes it special, that you're going to get my attention. It's not going to go to somebody else. And yeah, so thank you again for having me. I'm going to post some information for you, if that's okay, with a coupon code that you can save for later. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for the coupon code. And I think Wendy did post some information in the chat. You can take a peek at that and add to it as you wish. But yeah, greatly appreciated that you sponsored our program this morning. Please take advantage of her fine product. I was telling her before we got started, this is great for girls' weekend or your family get-togethers, just to make it a great memory for everyone. And it's good for guys and gals. It's not just a girl's product, for sure. All kinds of different things on her website. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm very excited for our presenter this morning. Dominic is a former board member and a very valued and respected member of our advisory board, and he brings a lot of value and impact to our community. He's the founder and facilitator of Said Spirit Bereavement Support Group, a grief support group for those that are survivors of the sudden unexpected death of a spouse or significant other. The group meets monthly in the Reading, Pennsylvania area and is free and no registrations required. He's also the editor of Said Spirit Quarterly newsletter, which is free to anyone, anywhere, through regular mail or email, and it's available to read on the Circle of Life Coalition website. He's the author of the recently published book, Miss Your Forever, Reflections After the Death of a Spouse, and is a public speaker on topics of loss, grief support, and his own personal grief journey. He's scheduling Meet the Author events for the fall. Dominic also serves on the advisory board for Circle of Life Coalition. So without further ado, Dominic. Now I'm going to share my screen. It's going to take us a little minute because I'm going to do his slides for him today. So
thank you, Deb.
Or get rolling here.
Yeah, if you can just put that first slide up.
Okay, hold on a second.
And I'll start. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Amy, for sponsoring this program this morning. You're probably thinking, you know, what is this guy talking about, Letters to Heaven? And maybe we'll give you a little bit of background before we really get into the topic.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Basically, about 15 and a half years ago, my life was turned upside down with the sudden unexpected death of my wife in a vehicle accident that I stumbled upon in my search looking for her because she didn't show up for work. And needless to say, my life changed in an instant. Something very difficult to overcome any loss, no matter what the loss is. But in turn, losing your spouse that you've known for 30 years without any kind of warning really threw me for a loop, so to speak. So immediately, or perhaps a few days afterwards, I found comfort in just writing things down. And it started on index cards, 3x5 cards. Eventually, it ended up coming into a journal capacity that I didn't even know I was journaling until somebody told me that after about a year of doing that. And as I was journaling things, I think it came to a point that I started reflecting and started asking questions and wondering and writing directly, I guess, to my deceased wife, in a sense. And there were times that I actually came to the point that I thought these were like letters to heaven. It was so much of a point of letters to heaven that I looked at it upon as being, it was actually a reflection that I did relative to an article that appeared in one of my newsletters that eventually ended up in the book, Miss Your Forever, along with 68 or 67 other reflections about my journey over these past 15 years. So that's kind of how it really came to be to come up with it. And basically, a letter to heaven is almost like taking journaling to the next degree. I equate my personal entries and writing to those that you can equate your own writing to those that you lost, to loved ones. And it's an opportunity, basically, to exercise that anyone can do. I mean, like so many other things to help us when we grieve, this is one more thing to do. If you find that you feel like doing this, and it's totally up to you. Can I have the next slide? The next slide is going to show how I define letters to heaven. And basically, it's a concept that is created by you that provides an outlet for you to share thoughts and feelings with your loved one. This is private, it's confidential, only you are doing it. And your outlet can be anything you want. I mean, to be, and only you will know it and know what it is. So it is private and confidential, as the slide says, and it is this concept that you yourself create. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, wait a minute, I can't write anything. I've never wrote anything. But you have to realize I said the same thing. I never wrote a thing in my life except before my wife died, the most I wrote was maybe something for work, or even in college way back when I was doing research papers I wrote. But I never had any inkling to write at all. And when you think about it, these letters, these private thoughts are yours and yours alone. So that's important that you keep that in mind. So let's go to the next slide and tell you what it isn't, what it is not. Basically, this is not, it does not involve a psychic medium. A lot of people are thinking, wait a minute, heaven, writing something to a deceased member of your family or a friend. No, there's no psychic phenomena or medium involved in this. This is just another form of communication. And a psychic medium, obviously, a lot of people believe in them and do go to them. They are also another form of communication if you still believe in that process. And but with them, you're not calling the shots. So it's important that you realize this is not something that would involve a psychic medium. It also does not involve another person. This is strictly an exercise that you and you alone do. It also is something that is not done publicly unless you decide to tell people in a support group or a therapy session about what you're doing with writing. But it's up to you. I mean, this is something that's only yours to do, yours to decide, and you can share with nobody. And you know, it's a letter. We say letters to heaven. I say letters to heaven. It's not actually mailed or emailed to anyone. No, it is something that that you do yourself and you create and you hold on to, or you do other things with it, which we'll get into a little bit later. But that's basically all the things that it is not. Let's talk about what it is. If I can have the next slide. And what it is, well, it's all about communication. That's the theme here. It's communication through the written word. It's communication through perhaps a poem, through poetry, perhaps music. Some people write a song about their loved one or create a poem about their loved one. It's also communication through thoughts, through feelings, through your hopes and wishes, even prayer. There's some people, myself included, every morning and every evening, I communicate through prayer to my wife. I believe, you know, this is something I truly believe in doing. And I look upon that as perhaps a talk to heaven, not a letter in that sense. But saying something in the beginning in the morning and at evening before I go to bed gives me a comfort level that helps me throughout the day. And yes, I know it's been a long time since she had died, but I keep her close in my heart that way. She's always around me. I feel her presence in many ways, which I can get into a little bit later. But communication is the key here. What this all is all about communication. A communication that provides an outlet for what you want to say to whomever you want to say it to. And like I said, through written word, poetry, music, thoughts, wishes, prayer, this is the way you communicate to make yourself feel a little bit better as you're on your grief journey. So let's go on to the next slide. And we can talk that although we say letters to heaven, letters is just one method of communication. And basically, when we look at letters, as I mentioned, it's something that you would maybe handwrite. When I do my letters to heaven, I like to handwrite them. It's easier for me, although a lot of people find it easier to do other things. As we mentioned, a poem, perhaps creating a poem or a song would be a way you would communicate to your loved one. But also email. There are some people that like to take out their laptop or their tablet or their smartphone and just do an email to them. Now you're probably thinking, okay, how are you going to send an email? Well, you're not going to send it. Although I do know of people that have talked about this that in fact created an email account for their spouse or their loved one, and they just, they actually would send it to the email account that they controlled, of course, just because they felt comfortable enough to do the email and hit the send button, like they were really sending it to them, but it was going to another email account that they can go back and review. So that is a possibility. Another thing besides the email, the poem, the song, and just the writing could be cards, a greeting card. I know a gentleman who comes to my support groups many years ago shared how every birthday for his wife, he would pick up a birthday card. And on her birthday, besides buying a slice of cake for himself at the local Giant or Weis markets, and celebrate her birthday, he would write a card to her, and write a card, a birthday card, put it in an envelope and put it in a drawer. And he did that every year in honor of her. And he felt good doing it. Something you got to keep in remembering is, as crazy as sometimes what I'm talking about here, letters to heaven, expressing your thoughts and your feelings, this stuff is really helpful to most people. It gives you a sense of peace and comfort. And if it's making you feel better, that's all that matters. You're not hurting anybody else. You're doing this alone. I can't emphasize enough, it's a private thing. So the other methods we have are silent or out loud when you're alone. You can just sit silently in a chair and think about your loved one, or out loud when you're alone at home. You can talk to them as you're walking from room to room, maybe as you're folding laundry, maybe as you're scanning the channels on television. You can be talking to them. Gee, look at this. I wish you were here to watch this movie with me. Or, gee, look what happened today's news events. Things like that you can communicate. Another thing that I do is meditation. Is another way of communicating, as well as prayer, as I mentioned before. And sometimes in response to dreams I communicate. If I have a dream about my wife, something of that nature, perhaps of our past lives together, sometimes I'll communicate back to her, telling her about the dream I had, of what it was about. So some of the things of all these methods to do, I do the letters, I do the reflections, I do journal entries, I actually do the out loud talking, I'll admit that. I do the meditation, I do the prayer, and I do the response to dreams. So I do quite a bit of communicating to heaven. So let's talk about, okay, so now that we know what this Letters to Heaven's about, how do we get started? So if I can get the next slide up there, Deb, I'd appreciate it. So basically, how did we start doing this? Well, it's something that's quite easy. I mean, because you're controlling this, number one. I can't emphasize enough. This is your thing. You're not being directed or reading a book about this. Like I said in the beginning, it took me a full year to realize I was journaling, and then 2 more years to think about what I was doing was communicating to heaven. So it basically is all about you. So basically, find a quiet, comfortable place to be to do this. Perhaps in your bedroom or living room, at a comfortable table, on a sofa, and just have nothing around you, similar to a place you'd find if you'd be meditating. Um, have that desire to want to express yourself. This exercise isn't for everybody. I mean, not everybody's going to think, God, it's not something I'm into. I don't really feel like doing that, and that's okay. This is just one other method to help you along your grief journey. And it may not be for everybody, just like people don't like going to support groups. They'd rather do a one-on-one therapy session, and that's fine. So basically, select a method to express yourself. The methods that we already discussed. Do you want to do the letter? Do you want to do an email? Do you want to type it on a computer? Do you want to write a song or perhaps create a poem? You select the kind of thing that you want to express yourself. Again, no special skills are required for this. I mean, this is totally your thing. And what's even nicer is the fact that nobody's judging you on this. This is a judgment-free zone. It's only you. There's nobody critiquing you. There's nobody grading you. There's nobody taking a score. This is totally up to you. You can start writing this letter to heaven for the first time, and you can maybe after 2 paragraphs stop and say, you know what? I can't do this. That's okay. It's okay that you can't do that. Or maybe you want to write 1 paragraph and stop and go back to it next week. You can do that too. This is something that you set the rules for you. It's all about you. It really is. And that kind of ties into our program sponsor, actually. It's all about you, Amy. But anyway, I digress. If I can get the next slide, we're going to talk about what do you write about? We're talking about writing to heaven and letters to heaven and all this stuff, poetry and maybe creating a song. But what do I write about? So next slide. Basically, you write about anything that comes to your mind. And this could be stuff relative to thoughts, feelings, memories. You can write about sadness because let's face it, you're writing a letter to heaven. There's going to be some sadness here. Some people write about regret. Some people write about choices, reflections. Some people actually go as far as talking about risks, guilt, signs, triggers. And there are some people that actually talk about the last day of your loved one's life and how that affected you. The other things you can write about concerns seeking guidance. You can ask for help. It could be random thoughts, perhaps, that you're writing about. Anything that comes to your mind at the time is stuff that you should be jotting down or creating a song or a poem. One thing that's really important about this writing method is content of what you write is what matters. Grammar and spelling and punctuation does not. So that's very important. I see our next slide is up already. So the next part is there is no right or wrong. This is something that is done freely and from the heart. This is a time for you to tell your loved one what you never had the chance to say. And there are so many of us out there that never really had that final goodbye. Their loved one left them suddenly and unexpectedly, tragically, in a blink of an eye, and they never really had the opportunity. Some of us also never had the chance to say, I love you, or I'm sorry, or just simply goodbye. And this is an opportunity that you can speak from your heart and let it known to them how you feel. So getting back to this, write anything you want. It's your letter and only for you to see if you want it to be. Some people actually place the completed letter in an envelope and address it to them. Sometimes they would keep it in a drawer, keep it in a shoebox, or as I said earlier, if they're doing it on an email, they'll send it to an already owned secondary email address for safekeeping. And they'll keep it there, and maybe they'll go back and reread it. Some people will do on special days or an annual observation relative to when they write these letters to heaven. So all of that stuff is all part of doing it. So we can go with the next slide, which will talk about how often do we do these letters to heaven. We'll get into that. So basically, it's all up to you, basically, and this whole concept of letters to heaven is up to you. How often do you do this? Well, some people think I'm going to do it one time and I'm done. And that's good enough for me, and that's fine. You can make one letter. It could be a short letter. It could be 5 pages. It could be anything you want, and you can incorporate all those topics that we just talked about. So here's our slide. So you have the one time. You can do it, or some people decide to do it ongoing, continuous. Sometimes that letter to heaven could turn into a diary of sorts, or journaling, as I have done it and continue to do the journaling. So that's important as well. Also, you can do it weekly. Maybe it's something that you do every Saturday evening at the end of the week or on a weekend that you decide to write down something, or monthly. Maybe monthly at the end of the month or at the beginning of the month, or any day you pick. Once a month, you might make that letter to heaven. Other people pick a special day, such as a birthday or an anniversary. Some people want to say something to their loved one on their deathversary. Yes, deathversary is the day of their death. It's something that's been coined in the grief world, and too often we don't want to say things relative to an anniversary of their death. It's not a celebration, it's a deathversary. So sometimes people do that day as the day to write or communicate to them. Sometimes when you are at the lowest point you could be and you need guidance and love, you take pen to paper. I've been that one many times over my years of grieving, and that's when I did it the most. And of course, whenever there's a need to say something, to communicate with them, whether it be through that letter that's handwritten or the talking out loud or the meditation or the poem or the song, whenever there's a need, just reach out to them. So how often you do this, it's up to you. There's some people that do it daily, some still do it weekly, and some even send greeting cards, mentioned earlier. If we can have our next slide, we're going to talk about what do you do with these letters? What do you do with the emails you send? What do you do with this communication that is going to turn into a hard copy of some kind? Let's face it, we can all talk out loud and stuff like that, but what do you do with the letters? And as our slide shows, some people keep them in a special place. And on special occasions, they will reread them to themselves, or perhaps at the cemetery or the final resting place. Some people actually go through a ritual where the letters are burned in a fireplace or at a fire pit, reducing thoughts to ashes and releasing your grief in that way. And others discard them. They shred them immediately, or maybe after a specific time frame. Most of the people that I know that do the letters to heaven usually keep them longer than when after they write them. They keep them for about a year. Some keep them forever. Some have them for years. Others like to do that ritual with a fire pit, perhaps in the summer or in the fall, and say a prayer and then put it in the fire, or perhaps in that fireplace at home. They like to do the ritual. And other people just like to maintain them and maybe every year cleanse it. Every year, um, let them go, discard them, shred them, and then start a new year as a new beginning of communication. So again, I keep saying it, but it's all up to you what to do with these letters, whether you hold on to them or discard them. If I can have the next slide, we'll talk about what's behind these letters to heaven. And basically, the next slide is going to show that what's behind the letter to heaven is believing. Believing is the key. And believing it is, you have to believe that however you are communicating will benefit you. Just like the signs that we receive from the other side, you must be open to the possibility to receive the rewards that these letters may provide to you. There are so many signs that we get from our loved ones. So many. There's too many to mention for me to even go into all the signs I've received over the years, and I continue to receive them. But I receive those signs because I believe. And I really feel that believing is the key for sending these letters. The letters to heaven will bring you more signs. That's my opinion, because I get more signs than most people I talk with. I think it's all good, it's all healthy, it's all helpful to anyone who's willing to try this exercise of letters to heaven. And you have to realize this is up to you. It's private, it's confidential. Only you should have to know about it unless you want to share it with other people. Totally up to you. But if you don't believe in something, if you don't have faith and hope that what you're doing to communicate to your loved one, then it's not going to work for you. You have to believe in this concept. May I have the next slide, please? Because we're going to talk about something we've been mentioning, but we're going to re-emphasize the fact of control. There is so much in the grief world when you are in the middle of your journey of grief that you absolutely cannot control, or you have to do something, or you must do something, or you're being told to do something, or you're being guided to do something else. Your head's a mess. You're in a whirlwind of depression and of sadness, and you're crying. But this is the one thing with the letters to heaven that you are in control of. In any method or format, it can be the one thing that you control, whether it be the poem, the song, the letters, the email, the meditation. You're basically controlling this. You've got it. So that's the beauty of this. You control how, when, where, and how many times to write these letters. You control what you write about, as we talked about. You know, some people, even myself included, I'll write about happy times. At the end of April, I went to see my daughter up in New Hampshire and my grandchildren. When I came home, I wrote a letter to heaven to my wife. And I told her how the grandchildren were doing, how they're getting so big, how happy my daughter looked. I shared that with her. And I felt so warm inside doing that. That is something that is an incredible feeling to do, because I felt like she was part of me. She saw that. She witnessed it, or she read it now. She read my feelings. You control what you write about. You control the destiny and the privacy of the letter itself. You can make yourself feel better by being a participant. Whether that be through and anything, a participant in Letters from Heaven, of course. But let's face it, when you're going through grief, you make yourself feel better when you're participating in a therapy session with your counselor, therapist. Make yourself feel better when you're participating through a support group of other people. You are deciding to react, to do, to start, to believe, to want, to desire to get better. It's all about you wanting to get better. And Letters to Heaven is one more way to do that. If I can get the next slide, please, we'll continue on the control issue. Because control is power. When you think about control being power, you yourself are in the driver's seat. You're not the passenger anymore. You're not sitting there waiting for somebody to take you somewhere or be somewhere. You are in the driver's seat. You're driving the car and you're in control. And control is power. Knowing you have control of something while you're grieving makes you feel better about the life ahead of you. Because it feels like you're in command. You know where this is going. And you feel confident in yourself where it's taking you. At any time, or at a time when you are the most vulnerable and the world is closing in on you, this is something you have the power to make decisions on, and no one else does. No one. Not other family members, not your children, not your neighbor, not your coworkers at work. This is something you have control over. And as I said in the beginning, control is power itself. So let's go on to the next slide and think about one question. All I've been talking about is doing these letters to heaven. But you know, why do we do this? Why do this at all? Why should we partake of this exercise in Letters to Heaven? Basically because it feels good. You have something to share. You have something to say. You need to vent, and you need to ask questions, even if it's the questions of why, even though you'll never get an answer, but you can still ask it. But that's why you do it. We do that because it feels good to us, and it makes us go a little bit better with regards to along the journey. And doing these letters to heaven, or the poems, or the songs, this could be very challenging at first. This exercise can help you through introspective honesty and self-reflection. And through introspective honesty and self-reflection, it doesn't have to stop. You know, there is no timeline on this. You can't say, I'm going to do the letters to heaven. I'm done it now. What do I do now? You can always do these, or you can stop whenever you want. But it's the first steps towards gaining acceptance and much needed comfort after the loss of your loved one. This is an opportunity for you to believe in yourself and have faith and hope that what you are doing with this communication is helping you heal. It really is helping you heal. And it's providing you the necessary confidence and keeping your loved one close to you in your heart. So maybe the next slide, again, will continue on why are we doing this. Basically, in some way, your voice through a letter to heaven will be heard by the special person you miss so much. I kind of alluded to this earlier about signs. And what's amazing that I can share with you is that sometimes days or even weeks later, after I do a letter to heaven, I will get a sign. And I kind of been tracking that, and it's amazing. And it's all part of that believing thing. Like I said before, you have to believe in this. You have to have faith and hope in it. So why do this at all? Because I really feel that this will allow you to heal faster, heal better, and you will get perhaps a sign from your loved one. Also, why we do this is it provides a source of strength and liberation during this most difficult time that we have. It gives us an outlet for our anxiety, and it's able to help guide us and take us further on our grief journey. So that's important at all. So that's kind of why we do this, why we get involved in it, why we're a part of it. If I may have the next slide, please, Deb. I'll give you some of my final thoughts about this topic. Basically, put pen to paper, type on a laptop, create a poem or write a song, write out a greeting card, maybe for their birthday or their deathversary, and say a prayer. It's all up to you because you are in control. It really, really does make you feel better. It makes you feel better by taking action, making choices. It all makes a difference in your life. Letters to heaven are always welcome. You'll never get turned down for writing a letter to heaven, creating a poem or a song about your loved one, meditating, keeping them close in your heart. It's always welcome. Love for those that have left way too soon before us. Welcome our thoughts and our prayers all the time. One more final note, and then Deb, you can do the final slide. Please, whenever you're available to do that. A final note I'll share with you. I don't just write letters to heaven to my wife, who tragically left me many years ago. Tonight, actually, I'm going to be writing a letter to heaven, and I'll share with you to who. I'm going to write a letter to heaven tonight to my father. My father, his birthday's tomorrow. And I'm going to spend time tonight before I go to bed. I'm going to put pen to paper. I'm going to tell my dad how much I miss him. And that I hope he's enjoying his birthday in heaven. And that his son and his daughter miss him very much. And I'm looking forward to doing that. Because I know every time I write a letter to heaven, whether it be to my wife or another family member, it gets me stronger and makes me heal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dom. I think one of the strongest messages that I got from this and working with you all this time is that it's okay to feel. Sometimes folks are afraid to feel whatever that feeling is, and especially sadness. So it's okay to feel. We had some comments in our feed. Wendy did share the link to the Facebook page and how to contact you and interest in the support group. And of course, the last slide has that some of that information too. But there was a question about where the Sud spirit came from and what that means exactly.
Absolutely. Sud spirit is an acronym, and basically Sud's spirit spells out sudden, unexpected death of a spouse, for the Sud's part. The spirit is survivors in participation to inform, renew, improve, and triumph. The flower that's below the logo that you see on the last slide there, if that's still up, that flower is a gardenia, and that was my wife's favorite flower. It also is the flower that's on the cover of the book, Miss You Forever. The cross in the middle of suds and spirit with a dove on it, that is from a chain. That cross is on a chain, sterling silver chain, that my wife gave me the year we were engaged. Although I welcomed the gift from her, I wasn't much of a chain wearing kind of guy at the time. I did like it, but I hardly ever wore it. I used to wear it when I'd be away on business trips away from her for a week or so to keep me closer to her. I would wear the necklace. Since my wife died, I wear that chain every day. I have it on now. And this very chain is the cross with the dove that represents what's on the Sud Spirit logo. So that's pretty much what it's about.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. But yeah, it's all about you, Amy. Just thinks the process such a great way to relieve anxiety, sadness, other feelings, and it's a great process. And it is taking the time to explain all of that was really good. Let's see here. Let's see. Is there any other questions? Anything I might have missed there? I don't think so. I think it was so thorough. And then of course the coupons on there too. I'm gonna stop sharing. If I think everybody had time to copy everything down they need from there. Okay. And there's Dom and a picture of his book. It can be purchased on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, I think. Anywhere else,
Yep.
Dom?
Yeah, Apple, iTunes,
Thank you.
or directly from me.
There you go. All right. Did I miss any questions, friends, who've been monitoring the chat for me? Let's see. Oh, anybody interested in joining the Circle of Life Coalition can certainly express an interest in the chat or go to our Circle of Life Coalition website and submitting just a form, your email address and outreach, and we can talk to you some more about that. Be launching a poll, I think, about our presentation today. The recording will be posted within usually 48 hours unless there's a glitch. Our fine videographer, Gary Hawkins, does that. He helps to edit some things in case there was some issues. I know I discovered I'm not the very best slide forwarder during this. My computer is very sensitive and we're sticking with that. But the slides were really great with that. So I am going to bring up something that I can read here related to our future programming so that I can read that for everyone, what's going to be going on next month. And Gary is going to post our fundraiser. So sorry, friends. There we go. October 16th, 2021 from 1 to 3 at Burke's Lanes. For $100 per team per lane, you can have up to 6 bowlers. So that's $20 a person. There shall be food. There shall be raffles. There shall be 50-50 in-person fun. Please consider coming out to have some in-person fun. You can be as safe as you want. You can wear masks, you can wear gloves, but certainly consider to come out and meet us and have some fun to support the Circle of Life Coalition. And then in August, does anybody have, I had up what we were going to have for August. I apologize, it disappeared on me. Here we are. So sorry as I look off camera here. 4 tools for caregiver well-being during a pandemic, presented by Miss Angela Snyder and Miss Leanne Thrapp. That is August 5th at 8:15. So that is definitely worthwhile coming to, and this definitely helping us to provide us with tools so we don't feel so anxious in public, and we are just always, we're an edge in public. I found that myself, just going to the grocery store, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, we don't have to wear a mask, just helping us with some of those tools to recenter again. So that will be very informative next month. Are there any more questions? Nope, I don't think so. So I think I'll give us some time back to everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Dominic. Everyone, stay cool and dry out there. Thanks again.